Oh, good evening, Cosmigos. Look at this setup. Hey, I'm my own boss. I can do what I want, you know? Yeah, a boss that's not on a payroll, but actually there's something you can do about that, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, welcome back. It's been, a couple of weeks? Yeah, my bad. Been a bit distracted. Don't worry, I'm trying to keep these intros short, but the thing that has kept me procrastinating this evening is just this, just quickly. I don't know if you can read that. It might be inversed. The world's greatest UFO and alien encounters. Now, my mum was busy sorting through old stuff in the garage. She found that book. It's a chunky bastard. I don't remember this book, but I would have owned it when I was about 11, we'd worked out. Now, firstly, that shows how long I've been interested in this sort of thing, because I'm like 48 now. But also, I was in a secondhand bookshop about 3 months back in Wellington, and I saw that exact same book, and I felt that I was drawn to it. And, I'm kind of like, yeah, this is spooky, like, maybe there's something to this. I'm drawn to the... No, you're into UFOs, you're in the UFO section of a bookshop. It's not actually that interesting. Not everything's a synchronicity, Steve. But I can see now why it did jump out at me, because I owned it when I was 11 years old, and I'd completely forgotten until Mum found that today. So anyway, that's interesting, isn't it? Not really. We're back. So we're up to Season 1, Episode 14, and tonight's guest is Lesley. She had 2 stories, and we've split them across 2 different episodes. Both are audio only, so in a moment you won't have to look at my ugly mug. Appreciate that. Yeah, tonight's one, Lesley's story takes place in a rather traumatic setting, but it has a really, really lovely component to it. It's a beautiful story, and yeah, I'm excited for you guys to hear it. Now, we'll crack into it. Just a reminder, that joke I made earlier about being my own boss, but like not being able to pay myself. Well, you could pay me via a one-off donation, either anonymously through cryptocurrency or through standard debit and credit card options. Okay, both links are available in the show notes and in my bio on Spotify and YouTube. That would be hugely appreciated. Not expected, but that would be amazing. Any small amount or big amount, preferably a big amount. All right, let's crack in. This is the Cosmic Banter podcast. I am your host, Steve, and tonight's episode, Season 1, Episode 14, is titled The Telepathic Trio, an Angelic Mystery. As ever, remain curious, and when the phenomenon decides to reach you, I hope that you decide to reach out to Cosmic Banter. Enjoy. Peace. Okay, Lesley, hey, good evening. Thanks for joining us. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really well. You're calling from New Zealand as well, aren't you?
Yes.
What part of the country?
Oh, in Auckland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's big enough to hide your identity. Everyone's from Auckland. I always sort of would roll my eyes if I met a Kiwi overseas and say, "Oh, where are you from?" And they'd say, "Oh, Auckland." as if expecting me to say, "Yeah, Auckland as well." Just
Always
another,
Auckland.
yeah. What's that saying,
Yeah.
Jaffa? It's a bit
Yes.
rude.
Yes.
Can't say it.
We're used to it.
Yeah, I bet. As I understand it, you've got a couple of um, specific stories of the,
Mhm.
what would you call it, of the supernatural, the paranormal, and
Paranormal.
yeah, and you probably sort of had quite a number of smaller experiences, but there's two stories in particular that you want to focus on tonight. Yeah, do you want to kick off with the first one? Give us some context and off we go.
Okay. So my first one, which is I guess the biggest um experience I have, it happened about 35 years ago, so it was 1990. Um, and it was around Christmas time. Um, I was 5 years old at the time, and I remember we were at a Christmas party in Auckland, and we left quite late, so we were heading home from this Christmas party in the city, and so we had to head back to where we were in South Auckland. Mum had it's old Austin Allegro. I don't know if you would know it, but they're old cars, and they fit about five people in the car. And so we had Mum in the front seat. She was driving. I had a baby sister who was about 3 months old in a car seat in the passenger front, which I don't think is legal now, but it was legal then. And in the back seat, we had Mum's friend. Her name is Letty. And my two older brothers, they were 8 and 13 at the time. And so that's the 5 seats taken up. I had to sit on the floor in the back seat because obviously there's no seat for me. I was the smallest at 5 years old. And so we were driving home. It was quite late, I'd say well after midnight, and we had to go down the motorway heading south. And from what I've been told there, because I was actually asleep on the floor in the back seat, as we drove under the Grafton Bridge, a brick was either thrown or fell from the bridge and it hit our car. And so, as you know, it's 100 Ks here on the motorway. We're going 100 Ks, and this brick comes down and it comes through and hits Mum just straight in the face. So that happened. I think I woke up when the car had stopped. But so the first weird thing there to me was we were driving 100K. She gets hit in the face with that brick. She's knocked out pretty much, immediately. She was unconscious. Yet she still managed to slow the car down, pull it over to the side and take us to a complete park, put us in park. Which that's the first thing that I'm kind of like, how did she do that when the brick knocked her out,
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first strange thing. She managed to somehow, we were parked on the side of the road. So we're all parked on the side of the road. Then I wake up. I remember just hearing a lot of noise and I had glass in my shoe and stuff. And at that point, we all kind of hopped out. I do remember seeing Mum. I looked in the front seat. She was unconscious. And yeah, so we all hopped out, the rest of us. I remember my 13-year-old brother was trying to comfort the 8-year-old brother because he was really a mess, I guess. He was crying. He was, just pretty traumatized, I guess. At that age, he kind of knew what was going on. I was kind of strangely calm. I was kind of like, what's going on? But I don't know. So he was crying. He was trying to calm him down, my other brother. Letty was there, the Mum's friend, but I think she was trying to wave people down more so to help us. And I just remember kind of standing there on the motorway, this little 5-year-old, and I was just kind of taking it all in. I wasn't crying. I wasn't upset. I wasn't even scared. It was really bizarre. But I was kind of just looking, and I just see all these cars just driving past on the motorway. And I remember thinking, why is no one stopping to help us? And then the next thing I remember is seeing a white mini, like a mini car, the tiny little cars. So I remember seeing this white mini pulling up to us. And then from there, everything's kind of just, my memories at least are kind of just flashes of things. I remember seeing the white mini. I don't remember much from that to my next memory, which is, I remember I felt like I was seated somewhere, but everything around me, like it was just white. I just remember like so much white brightness, and it felt like I was sitting down and then just staring straight ahead. And I couldn't see my brothers, my mum, like it was just, I felt like it was just me there. And looking ahead, I saw 3 females. Felt kind of like if we were in a car and I was in the back seat and they were in front, but there was 3 of them and they were all looking back at me, and they had long brown hair. It could have, if I was to guess the ages, it could have been a mother, a teenage daughter, and then a younger daughter maybe. So they were all kind of different ages, and they were just all looking back at me, smiling, which sounds creepy, but I wasn't scared or anything at the time. But they're smiling, and I remember hearing like everything's going to be okay, but they weren't speaking to me. So I, as an adult, I think maybe there was like a telepathic thing, because I don't remember them speaking. I just remember seeing them and hearing everything's going to be okay. And then after that memory is, there's not much after that. Then we're in the hospital somehow.
Are you saying that your next memory was these 3 women, but they're in the car with you?
I can't even say we were in a car. It felt like maybe we were in a car.
Right.
But I don't remember seeing any surroundings. I don't remember driving. I just remember feeling like I was seated, and everything around me was white. I couldn't see my mum. I couldn't see my brothers or Letty. I just saw these 3 females in front of me. They were all wearing white. Everything was white. The only thing that I noticed was they had long brown hair, kind of like what I had. Yeah.
Did they feel familiar?
That is one thing I have thought of actually through the years. I'm like, maybe they, were familiar, but I don't know. I don't know if I can't say I recognize their faces, but I just felt so safe. Like I wasn't scared. I just felt like everything's going to be okay. I was okay. I felt safe. I wasn't even in that moment thinking, where's mum or where's my brothers? Like there was nothing. I just felt safe.
Yeah, so was it more like in hindsight, you're like, oh, that was weird. It wasn't really like we were in the car and my brothers and mum weren't there. That's kind of weird. But in the moment, you weren't thinking of any of that?
Yeah. I guess because I was so young, I was only 5. I didn't really think too deeply into it until maybe years later, because to be honest, our family doesn't really talk about it because I think it was quite traumatic for everyone. I think I'm the only one that hasn't been like badly traumatized from it. Obviously, my mum, there was a lot of damage and she's still got trauma, from this day. My 8-year-old brother, who was a mess crying, I think he was very, very traumatized from that because, and this is another weird aspect of the story, is like me and my brother have not talked about this ever, but a few years ago, I really wanted answers to the story and I was almost going crazy trying to like figure it out. So I made the decision, like, I'm just going to toughen up and I'm going to ask him, because he was 8, he would remember some stuff too and maybe give me some answers. And I did ring him. Well, I'm 39, he'd be about 40 something. So, we're both older now, but I rang him one night and I asked him and I said, hey, do you remember obviously mum's the accident. And he said, yeah. And I said, like, what do you remember, from that night? Like, can you tell me anything? Do you remember who stopped and picked us up, who helped us, or anything at all? And what he told me is completely different to what my experience was. Completely different.
Okay. That's really intriguing. Yeah, so what was his memory?
His memory is, I think he said there was either a red or a green sedan that stopped. And I said, oh, well, okay. And I said, who was in it? And I think he said there was a guy and a lady or something. And I said to him, are you sure? Like, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. But just, I don't know. I know my brother, and I wanted to kind of, dig deeper, but I knew that I shouldn't. I think he was really traumatized from it. But I'm like, how can he remember something completely different? But me and Letty, my mum's friend who was in the car, we have the exact same memory and experience.
What did she describe in her words?
So Letty is one of my biggest regrets in my life, to be honest. Obviously, I grew up, had teen years and in the early 20s, and I didn't put my, I wasn't really thinking about this too much. It's something I've always kind of held close, but I didn't really dig into. So from what I've learned, well, from what Mum told me, after the accident, obviously Letty had the same experience that I did, and she would have been 30 odd at the time, full grown adult, and she was telling friends and family what she experienced. And from what I was told, no one was believing her, and everyone was kind of calling her crazy. And she eventually started, and I don't know if it's because of the accident or because of all this, but she actually started, I don't know what the term would be, losing her mind a little bit. She ended up quite, she wasn't all there. And so Mum told me all this. So I was like, oh, but I didn't really see it myself until we ran into Letty in the mall once. I was about 20 odd, I think, 20 years old. And we just ran into her. I was with Mum. We ran into her at the mall, and I didn't know who she was. I hadn't seen her in years. But Mum stopped and she said, oh, and called her over. And the first thing that Letty, she saw me, and the first thing she said to me, there was no hello, hi, how are you? She just said, you remember them, right? You remember the angels. And I haven't seen this woman in bloody 15 years or something. And that's the
Really?
first thing. Yeah. She just looked like, the look on her face was just, she was pleading with me, like, to find someone that would, could believe her. And
Oh my God.
I was quite uncomfortable. I don't really know this woman. And I said, yes, yeah, I do. I remember them. Yeah. She passed a good few years ago now. But yeah, she kind of was lost her mind. In Mum's words, she was not right after that, whether it was trauma or the stress of, having this experience and not having anyone believe her, or yeah, I
That's
regret
sad.
not, it is, I regret not finding her and sitting down with her, talking to her, maybe giving her that closure, and then me getting answers too, because throughout the years I've always been like, did I make this up in my head, or was it not real, or
I hope you've been told this and hope you realize this deep down. You weren't to know that she was really
yeah,
this deeply impacted by it.
yeah,
And I imagine you were less so because of your age. So it was, you could maybe make less sense of it. So would I be right?
yeah, that is right. Yeah, I guess in my older years, but then I ended up having kids, and so I just never got around to doing it, and I just wish she was still here. So yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, but see, the older brother that was also with us, the 13-year-old at the time, he ended up having a tragic or he was trained to be a jockey, and he had an accident with a horse where he almost died, and he ended up with a bit of brain damage. He's okay, but his memories and things are gone. So that's why I can't go to him for any memories or thing with this, because those are gone.
Yes.
So it really is just me and then my other brother who remembers something completely different.
And of course, it goes without saying, I imagine you wouldn't want to bring this up with your mother. She was the most
Oh, she
traumatized.
does
Oh,
talk about it. She does, yeah,
okay.
because obviously she was not conscious, but she believes
Yeah.
Letty and me. Um, but yeah, I don't even think she's spoken to my brother, but I don't even think I've told her what my brother remembers. But to be honest, I think my brother was so traumatized in that moment that, they say sometimes your brain will, I don't know what the word is, like kind of change what's happening to or create a different memory to protect you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes, I think
that's the
that's
only
pretty
thing that
common in
makes,
trauma, isn't it? To sort of
yeah,
shape it so as a coping mechanism, right?
yeah. So you can cope with what's happening, because I think I was young enough to not be traumatized by, say, a bizarre thing happening. I was kind of just like there and absorbing. He was at an age where he was kind of really, more aware of things. And
Yes.
then Letty also was at a good age where she was aware. I guess that's why she maybe ended up the way she did, and his memory completely changed. That it just wanted to protect him, maybe.
You've done it justice by giving all the facts, and I appreciate you not jumping to conclusions and speculation. So I appreciate that. But I do want to sort of hone in on what it possibly could have been,
Mm.
because you've described a memory of seeing three women and you couldn't see other family around there. And then that Letty, was it, also saw the same thing and it drove her crazy. So
Yeah.
let's kind of break that down. In your, upon reflection and retrospect, now as an adult,
Mm.
what about that memory seems off to you? And I guess ultimately, why is it a story that you'd be sharing on a supernatural podcast? Do you believe that there was a supernatural element to it?
Yes. I am a believer, but I'm the worst kind of believer. I am skeptical. I will try and find, reasons to say it's not, paranormal. But with this, yeah, I guess it's just those little details that make me think that it it wasn't anything of this world. There is another factor actually, which
Yes. Yes.
okay, so we kind of put these pieces together well after this. But so my grandmother, my mum's mum,
Yes.
she practiced black magic. She lived in the Philippines. She came here every now and then, well, once or twice, but she was in the Philippines, and she practiced black magic. Um, and so when Mum found my dad over there, and he wanted to bring her back here, and Mum was going to move away to New Zealand, um, my grandmother gave her I don't know what you call it, a verse or a prayer, that she could use if she ever felt like she was in like real danger, life-threatening danger, and she needed maybe something to save her. So that's what Mum told us, that she gave her that verse. And Mum obviously didn't use it unless she had to, but there was a night when we were kids where Mum believed that there was someone that had managed to get inside the house. It was quite late at night. I think I remember that night actually, because I remember waking up to hearing men and dogs, going around the house, and there was the police and the police dogs trying to find whoever Mum thought came in the house. And Mum admitted years after this accident that she actually used that verse that night. And one of the constant, so my grandmother did tell Mum, if you do use that verse, there will be consequences. So don't use it unless you have to, like really, really have to. So, and then we're thinking about that, then thinking about this accident and the fact that Mum was hit by this brick in her mouth. Like that's where it hit her. Her mouth was completely demolished. She's had to have surgeries and all sorts of things to fix her mouth. Mum used to have a beautiful smile, like perfect teeth. She was really, really beautiful. But with this accident, that brick, it hit her mouth and just destroyed everything. So we can't say for sure, obviously, but we think maybe that was the consequence of using that Black Magick verse that she used that night.
Wow. Well, you're right. We would never know, but
Yeah.
I think I've said this with another guest who was sort of similar. You framed yourself as the worst type of believer because you're skeptical and you're trying to find. No, I think that's the best type of believer, because you want to rule everything prosaic out first.
Yeah.
And that's what, from the perspective of a story, that's what makes it more compelling when you've ruled out everything already and it's still unexplainable. But for yourself as well, it's I guess perhaps some consolation that you've gone through that process, that you're not just jumping to conclusions. So I think that's a really healthy attitude. But and I'm much the same. Now I've had a guest who spoke about black magic, and I'm not familiar with that world at all. But I guess we all hear about satanic rituals and all that, and know that whatever it is, goes on, rituals or whatever. But I do understand that in particularly sort of South America, and it sounds like maybe the Philippines as well, there's quite a rich history of black magic. It's taken very seriously. And what you mentioned, even though we will never be able to, prove whether those two incidents were related, that is a common thing. The common thread with so-called black magic is that it's sort of give and take. You'll get something, but something will be taken away from you as well. She herself has said that she believes that's what happened, or
I think, I don't know maybe what made her think of it, but yeah, it was years and years after the accident where she kind of mentioned that. And I was like, I think me and my sister and her were talking one night and she kind of mentioned it. And yeah, that's when we were kind of like, I wonder if that's, that could be related. Yeah. She didn't really think too much into it at the time, I guess.
I suppose if you believe that there was going to be a consequence, that would be a pretty good indicator. That would be an event that you could point to, right? That's pretty much the worst of the worst. That's horrific.
The worst,
I just have a couple more questions on that before we wrap that story up, if that's all right, Lesley.
Yeah.
Let's now consciously allow for some speculation. All right. You're allowed to say whatever. There's no judgment. Do you think those three women were physical beings on the same plane like you and I are right now?
100% no. No, not at all. I guess the biggest thing would be when I was with them for the moment that I can remember, which would have only been maybe 5 or 10 seconds, or surrounded by the light. Like that was nothing from this earth. Yeah. And them, speaking to me, comforting me telepathically. That is very unexplainable to me. So I know that if my memory is true, which I believe it is, that they're definitely something else. None of us can definitely say for sure what anything is, but if I were to name them, it'd have to be angels. But, because people do talk about guardian angels and they protect you and they save you from things. But I do always wonder if they are, the guardian angels, why were they, why did they save us that night? Because obviously, like, so many families have terrible car accidents. Some die, some don't. Why did they save us that night? And then, and then other people don't get saved. I think that's my biggest question with this is why? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's a really interesting point you raise, because I guess people have survivor's guilt, all the time in these
Mm,
sorts of situations. If someone passes away, but they don't, why them and not me?
yeah.
But that must have been compounded to several orders of magnitude much greater for you, because you'd had this actual experience of these, what you would call guardian angels, saying,
Mm,
it's going to be okay. Do you think that's in part what upset, was it Letty, is that the pronunciation of the
Letty.
friend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. I think she would very much be how I am. But I'm lucky in having my mother believe me, and the close, my friends that I have told, they believe me 100%. Whereas I don't think she had that. So at least I have that, but still, I just like there's a need for answers. There's a need to, like, when I went and spoke to my brother a couple of years back, I was just, it consumed me for like a week or so. It's all I could think about. I don't pray or anything. I was like praying for them to come and give me a message or a sign or something. I just needed some kind of answer. I think she experienced that also. And yeah, it didn't end well for her, I guess.
You were 5 years old at the time, and then
Mhm.
15 to 20 years later, you bump into um, Letty in the mall with your mum, and she said that to you. Was that the first thing she said? She
That,
said, "Did you remember
yeah.
the women?" Or
Well, she called them the angels. That was she. There was not a
really,
hi. There was not a oh hello. There's nothing. There was she almost ran up to me, almost grabbed me. I think she did actually. She grabbed my arm, and she just had the look of just needing in her face, and she's like, "You remember them, right?" This is 20 odd years later.
oh, that's heartbreaking.
It really is, yeah. But
Well,
I gave her some closure in that moment. I hope that did help her, even in the slightest.
I'm sure it did, because you would have been the only other person in the whole world to validate. Even if she'd
True.
met some people that believed her, you're saying to her, "No, I experienced what you experienced as well." That would have, I'm
Yeah.
sure, been really comforting.
Actually, yeah, I never
I'm
thought of
sure.
that. Yeah.
So, was that the first interaction with her that made you realize that you had both seen the same thing, or did you discuss this when you were 5 years old, immediately after the crash?
No, I don't think me and mum talked about it until I was a lot older, actually. And obviously I didn't talk to my brothers or not. It just kind of, it was never discussed in the family. I think, yeah, maybe into my teens might have been the first time me and mum maybe talked about it.
And were you aware in the background of your mum's friend Letty being sort of crazy, for lack of a better term? And did you put two and two together that?
No, because mum didn't tell me about Letty kind of losing mind until, God, I don't know, later in life. But we did talk about the accident, and she did tell me that Letty remembers, this. And mum, swears by it. She says she remembers that. I believe that. I was like, oh. And I told her kind of bits about what I remember. And yeah, I don't think she's ever asked my brother about it though.
Wow, I mean, what a story! I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, but such a deeply personal experience, and sounds like you, all things considered, handled it really well. I mean, I suppose because of your age, there was only so much you could process.
Yes.
But yeah, what a thing to be plagued with. Have you has your memory of it or your feelings towards the memory, have they evolved in time? Like, are you still questioning why, and why not others? Or does it actually bring you some comfort as well?
It has. It has brought me a lot of comfort throughout my life when I've had, really hard times, or if I've been really stressed, or the memory of them and I guess what they've done does bring me a lot of comfort and strength when I need to. And I believe I've been given, the angel numbers. I've been given one once, and I looked it up. I don't really know too much about it, but I looked it up, and it was a message that I needed in that moment. I was going through something really rough with work and personal stuff, and the message that was given to me was exactly what I needed. Yeah. Yeah, I can't say it's them, but it does bring me a bit of strength and comfort.
Yeah.
When I need it. Mm.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And yes, we did sort of bond over the whole synchronicities thing and angel numbers. I'm on board with you, Lesley. I'm sort of
Yours
skeptical,
are
but
wild though. Like it really are.
well, like I want there to be a normal, really easy scientific explanation. Not necessarily easy. It doesn't have to be an easy explanation, but some sort of explanation. But that's obviously a separate thing entirely. But that's sort of how we first got chatting, I think, over a TikTok video about number sequences and how there's supposedly called angel numbers. Well, I'm like you in the sense of I don't believe in all of that stuff on face value because I don't know where all that comes from, and I don't have the time to research the history of, you pulled from this religion and some witchcraft over here and this and that, and that's how you've come, because it does seem like a very much like a sort of new agey internet thing, like astrology. And everyone just sort of accepts it on face value, which I don't like doing. But you see these enough, or you have synchronicities that are crazy enough that they have personal meaning, which it sounds like that particular moment, that angel number you saw at the time had for you. And, it sort of everything else goes out the window, doesn't it, in that moment? Like, you don't need an explanation. You couldn't explain it to anyone else, but it makes sense to you. Is that your experience?
Yes, yeah. That experience there that I'm talking about, I ignored it actually for a while. I didn't actually look it up until the next morning. I got it when I had woken up in the middle of the night at about, oh no, that's what it was. I'd woken up at 3:13 in the morning from a sleep. And it was quite bizarre. It was just, I was asleep and then snap, I'm awake, like wide awake. And the first thing I did was look at my phone. Not consciously, it's just what I did. And it was 3:13 and I kind of just like, oh, okay. But there was like this nagging feeling. I can't even explain what it was. It was like something was just bugging me. But
Wow.
I eventually went back to sleep. But in the next morning, I woke up, did all, coffee, whatnot, and I still had that nagging feeling. And I was like, oh, that's right. And I was like, 3:13. I didn't know much about Angela. I knew about them. I was like, I wonder. And so I Googled it. And it was that message that I really, really needed to read, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad that that you could find that deep meaning in it, that it made sense. And that's interesting, isn't it? That you had this really strong, you woke up and it is interesting. It's such a specific time. Like I thought you were going to say 3:33, like 3:33, because that's the witching hour and that's classic. And it's got a spooky element to it. But people could say, of course, that, well, what about all the other times that you wake up when it's not 3:33? So I was expecting you to say like a triple number. So that's actually even more interesting that,
And I do wait. There's not a night that I remember where I've slept through. I wake up quite often, at least 2 times a night. So it was nothing strange for me to wake up, but it was just how I just snapped awake, I was looking at the clock somehow, and then that nagging feeling. I'd never get that with any other time that I wake up.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes it more compelling because, if you woke up at 3:33 a.m. or 2:22, whatever, even people that aren't interested in so-called angel numbers know that there's perhaps a bit of a buzzy theme to that because it's unusual.
Yeah.
It's three numbers in a row, So you've got some bias there that you want to find a meaning out of this because it's a pattern and our mind loves patterns. So 3:13 is like just random. There's nothing significant really about that. There's nothing in culture that you knew going into that about the number 3:13 that would have caused you to look it up, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Lesley, those were that main story with the car accident and your mother's friend Letty and your experience with I guess what you would call angels. That was really fascinating, and there was so many interesting elements to that. So thanks so much for sharing that. You've got another story, so maybe we're going to have to do a second episode sometime. How does that sound?
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
All right, well, appreciate your time tonight, and we will speak again soon. Thanks, Lesley.
Okay, thank you.